JanetOnOccasion, and today we are continuing our lore play series. We are on episode 5, and so in the last episode we talked about Eltharion some more, and also Cathaic. That was wrapped up quickly. Not a lot of stuff about Cathaic, which is very sad. Anyway, so as we're approaching Chrace, I thought now would be a great time to talk about the Silver Hounds, who have nothing to do with Strace, but they've been in our army the whole time, and they're actually pretty, you know, they're like the militia, right? They're everywhere. It's not really specific to one faction, so we may as well just talk about them now, because they've been in our army for ages, and we just haven't had the time to talk about them. I mean, they're our starting unit, so we want to talk about Silver Hounds. So, anyway, so, Knights of Ulthuan. Elves are horsemasters without peer, and their knightly hosts can be accounted amongst the most glorious in the known world. Such is the duty and right of Ulthuan's nobility, to ride to war in the raiment and splendour of the heroes of old, to fight at the forefront of battle, and to repeat the glories first won by the knights of Anarian's court. Yet all the courage and skill of Ulthuan's knights would be as nothing without their swift elven steeds, whose intelligence and faithfulness far outstrips the horses of other lands. So, the Silver Hounds. Of all the High Elf Knights, it is the Silver Hounds who are seen as the perfect exemplars of martial grace and valour to which young elves should aspire. Dragon Princes are too distant and aloof, Illyrian Reavers perhaps a touch too wild and uncivilized. Silver Helms are proud without being haughty, and brave without being undisciplined. Thus, Ulthuan's legends more often centre around the deeds of its Silver Hounds than any other warriors within the 10 realms. Where the ranks of archer and spear regiments are drawn from the citizenry of Ulthuan, the Silver Hounds are recruited purely from the families of noble blood. While such a calling is not compulsory, few amongst the nobility are prepared to invite dishonour by not fulfilling their duty. Furthermore, service as a Silver Helm is often considered the finest way for a noble to prove himself as warrior and leader both. A Silver Helm's first lessons drive out his desire for individual glory and personal renown, placing it with a pride that stems from his regiment's deeds. As his training progresses, he learns to more fully master his steed. A Silver Helm must ride unflinchingly into the din of battle, and his horse must bear him thence without hesitation or spoken command, trampling foes that block the path. There are few more glorious sights in all of Ulthuan than when a regiment of Silver Helms dips its lances and charges into the fray. The Silver Helms are willing to throw themselves into the most dangerous of battles. They do so in the understanding that glory awaits those who prevail, and they are arrogant enough to believe they can succeed no matter the odds. For these young nobles there can be no hesitation in facing any foe. It is those victories that are hardest won, which bring about the sweetest glories and earn the grandest renown. So now we've covered sort of, you know, nobility, just being nobles and being generals and stuff, but now we've learnt how they actually get there in the first place. They're not just born, you know, these crazy, clever, awesome guys. No, they become a Silver Helm, and then they go on to doing, you know, more important things. So that's kind of nice, and also it means, you know, we've explained more of the army that we're trotting around with, which I think is always a good thing. But there is one unit there which we really want to discuss pretty shortly, because we're actually invading Strace now, taking it from the Dark Elves that apparently have taken over, which is unusual, but anyway. Because we have a white line of Strace, and guess where they're from? Yeah, that's right, it's Trace. Or Trace, you know, could be a soft or a hard CH, I'm not sure. But I say Trace. I just think it sounds better, honestly. It sounds more fanciful, which, you know, more haughty. It fits the elves better, in my opinion, but, you know, whatever. I think you pronounce it how you want, let's be honest. So, guys, so we're going to talk about Trace, because we're about to conquer it back, right, in this episode. We're working towards, you know, what's the word? Liberating. That's it. We want to liberate the place. Although we're not actually. We're going to capture it for Laverne, but, you know, in terms of the RP experience, we're liberating it. Anyway, so, Strace. Strace was once a relatively empty and peaceful land, occupied only by those who sought to escape the civilized realms and return to nature. Now, Strace exists in a state of permanent war, for it is the main route through which the Dark Elves seek access to the inner lands. Its settlements are fortified, its glades ring it to the sound of sword upon steel, and its populace lives ever under the shadow of battle. The once wondrous forests have become perilous, for dark magic has scoured the land, corrupting ancient groves and giving birth to monstrous creatures. The hunters of Strace maintain a constant watch on the passes through their lands. When the Dark Elves are spied, great eagles are immediately dispatched to summon reinforcements. Meanwhile, the Thracian archer and spear regiments employ every trick of ambush and forestcraft to hinder and destroy the trespassers. Thus has many an invading army of Dark Elves simply been swallowed up whilst campaigning in Chrace, with no tale of its fate ever reaching their twisted homeland. Good for them. Anyway, the mountains of Chrace are the home to the fearsome white lions. To be counted as a real hunter, an elf of Strace must kill one of those regal creatures single-handedly, or else tame it to his service. Neither task is an easy one, for the lions are intelligent and canny beasts, making the contest one of wits as well as strength. I feel like the lions would win a fight of strength. It's a lion, right? Anyway. The White Lion also gives its name to the legendary regiments in the service of the Phoenix Throne, the White Lions. Carefully selected warriors who guard the Phoenix King in battle. And apparently, Tyrion, too. So, you know, that's convenient. There they are. You can see them there. I think. Where are they? Where did they get to? You know what, I can't actually see them in there. Oh, they're right there. They're on their own. They're not in the fight, apparently. Anyway, they'll get to it. So, yeah, White Lions of Strace. We're going to talk about them next, because that's what Strace is famous for. That and just lions in general. Although, you know, it does kind of point out the fact that, yeah, they're under constant war. You know, constantly struggling against the Dark Elves there. So, I guess they just didn't do well in the most recent scuffle, and that's why we're fighting the Scourge of Cain. I mean, you know, why not, right? I mean, it's a total war game. If there aren't enemies everywhere, then there's no game, so here we are. So now, before we talk about White Lions, we have to go back in time a bit, because there's a reason why they're White Lions. Or, well, why they do the things they do, right? Why they're the bodyguards of the Phoenix King. There's a reason for that, and I want to put it into context. So I'm actually reading from the Dark Elves Army book. This is, I think, the 7th edition? Possibly 6th? I think 7th. Anyway, there's a history in here, which is pretty cool. So this takes place literally after Malekith first decides he's evil.
We have captured
so, in brief, Malekith made a load of friends, made friends with the Phoenix King, where he said, "Oh, Morathi, my mum, she's mental, she's evil, right? I brought her to you, she's crazy." And then, you know, the Phoenix King was like, "Oh, great, you're a good bro." And then Malekith killed him, and then went into the fires of Asuryan, burnt to a crisp, and then the war started between, you know, I guess the High Elves of Nagaraith, as it used to be known, and the High Elves, I guess, the rest of Ulthuan, I suppose. So yeah, so that's how Malekith started the war. But after he did kill the Phoenix King, at the time is Belshazzar, who was pretty great. He was a really good dude. He basically made contact with the rest of the world. He was the one that initially made contact with the dwarves, before they ended up having a war, which is a whole other thing. But anyway, he basically, you know, put colonies all over the world and built, you know, great cities in, you know, in the old world, which is very cool. Obviously they didn't last, because, I mean, where are they now, right? Yeah, yeah. So, anyway, straight after that, right, all of the remaining nobles that didn't get, you know, killed by sort of Malekith at the Shrine of Asuryan after he killed the High King, you know, all that lark, they basically had to elect a new Phoenix King right away, and that's rough. So, we're gonna get to that now. So, the handful of princes that had survived did not stand idle. There was not one amongst them strong enough to succeed Belshazzar, for each had warriors in his own realm. In the minds of the princes there was only one elf who could combat the Nagarothi, Imric of Calador, grandson to Calador Dragon Tamer, who was important, by the way, in super early history. Fought demons off, it was great. Anyway, Imric of Calador. So, grandson to Calador Dragon Tamer, Imric had none of his forefathers' magical skills, but was a deadly warrior and brilliant general. As Prince of Calador and leader of the Dragon Riders, Imric controlled the second most powerful kingdom in Ulthuan, eclipsed only by the might of the invading Nagaraith armies. You might think that's nothing to do with White Lions. Like, he doesn't have White Lions, he's got dragons and stuff. Like, what's up with this? But at the time, Imric was hunting in the mountains of Strace and was utterly unaware of the war that had engulfed the isle. The princes dispatched heralds to locate Imric and inform him of their decision. Meanwhile, Morathi used her sorceress powers to divine the intent of the princes and sent a cadre of assassins to slay the future Phoenix King. The gods, or fate, would decide who reached Imric first. Spoilers, it was Morathi's assassins that found Imric, and they closed in on their prey with evil intent. Because they're evil, you know, it's standard. Swathed in magical shadows, they prepared their ambush. Yet they had not accounted for the loyalty and fighting skill of the hunters of Chrace. When the Nagarothi assassin struck, Imric was alone and vulnerable. However, a band of Thracians who had accompanied him on his hunt heard the fighting and intervened. The Thracians slew the assassins, but at great loss, and Imric was saved. Even as Imric thanked these warriors, he received word from one of the prince's messengers of the terror being unleashed by the armies of Nagarythe. And then he became Phoenix King, said, "Be my bodyguards. You guys are cool." So we're going to talk about the White Lions now, because clearly, they're pretty cool if they can, if they're just hunters, right? Not really used to these wars or anything, but but they defended the Phoenix King. They saved his life, and that is cool. So now we're actually going to talk about just the White Lions in general, what they are, who they are, how they are. I don't know. We're going to talk about them anyway. So, Thracian hunters, White Lions of Strace. The White Lions have served as the personal guard of the Phoenix King since the time of Calidor I, and now you know why. Whilst hunting his Strace, Calidor received the news that he was to be the next Phoenix King. He immediately took the road to the Shrine of Assyrian, but was intercepted by Dark Elf assassins. He would surely have died, but for the intervention of a party of Thracian woodsmen, who swept out the forest to defend him. The Thracians slew the Dark Elves, and thereafter saw Calidor safely to the Phoenix Shrine, employing every iota of their woodcraft to avoid further Dark Elf ambushes that lay in their path. Calidor's first act, once crowned as Phoenix King, was to form the Thracians into an official bodyguard based in Lethern. And I'm aware that sort of copies, what we've just said, but it doesn't really give the context for that. It doesn't really tell you about Calidor. It doesn't even say at this point, he wasn't Calidor. He was still Imric. When he got crowned the next Phoenix King, he changed his name to Calidor, after his, grandfather, who was the powerful mage that was important in even earlier history. So, it doesn't mention that, which I think is a bit of a shame. But it still tells you how badass they were, and the fact that they, used their sort of, their craft to avoid ambushes and stuff. It just adds more flavour to it. So I wanted to be thorough with this, because they're a cool unit. So, a warrior can only join the ranks of the White Lions after displaying considerable valour and skill upon the battlefield. He must then also complete the traditional rite of a Thracian warrior, to hunt and kill a White Lion. These great cats are amongst Thrace's fiercest creatures. They stand as tall at the shoulder as a horse, and a swipe of their claws is enough to shatter his spine. There are accounts of prides of White Lions ravaging convoys, and even attacking isolated villages should they become hungry enough. To slay such a beast is therefore an exceptionally difficult task, but if a warrior succeeds, he is entitled to wear the lion's pelt as a mark of courage. The thick pelt has another use too. Worn over armour, it offers excellent protection against arrows and shot. Although every Phoenix King since Calidor the Conqueror has offered his bodyguard their choice of replacement weaponry, the White Lions continue to proudly bear the traditional woodsman's axe into battle. Many of the axes are ancient heirlooms, handed down from father to son across centuries untold. Yet they never lose their keen edge, and can fell a tree or cleave a man in half with but a single blow. White Lion regiments are often dispatched to join the armies of Ulthuan during times of particular danger, tasked with protecting High Elf generals and mages or bolstering the overall strength of the army. White Lions are renowned for their unflinching courage in the face of overwhelming odds and terrible horrors, protecting their charge whatever the foe, and regardless of the danger to themselves. So, they're pretty cool. I find there's a bit of a trend, sort of amongst a lot of the sort of warriors of sort of the High Elves and actually the Dwarves. There's a cool parallel where they basically stick with things that aren't necessarily great in battle, just because of the sort of tradition of it. They're both very stuck in their ways, which is why they still don't get on. I find that really interesting. The fact they're different, but also very similar. And you compare that to sort of humans of the old world, who are constantly adapting, coming up with new ways and solutions to all of their problems. The High Elves and Dwarves, neither of them bother doing anything. They'll just be rigidly traditional, even if it's, a terrible idea. But I guess the Dwarves and the Elves, despite the fact they're using axes, and I guess in, the case of Dwarves, it's miners' picks and hammers, it's crafting equipment, right? It's not warriors' equipment, necessarily. But I guess they do have the advantage that they're all crazy magic weapons, right? They're all, you know, they don't blunt or anything like that. They're all special in that regard, whereas humans have to make do with good old-fashioned steel. So, you know, it's interesting to see. They sort of make do with sort of craftsman stuff. It's pretty interesting. I find that interesting anyway, so I thought I'd add that. So now, though, we're going to talk about a unit which I really, really, really wish were in Total War. Hopefully, soon we will get them. Hopefully, fingers crossed, because they're awesome. And that's the Lion Chariots of Chrace. Not all white lions are killed out of hand. The High Elves take no joy in needless slaughter, and often stay their blades should cubs be discovered. These infants would doubtless become savage and deadly beasts if they were left in the wild, but with expert care, the young white lions are raised to become as loyal as griffins. These tame white lions swiftly form a bond with the Thracian hunters that foster them, and later serve the armies of Ulthuan as war lions. So do many of the Phoenix King's bodyguard ride to battle in lion chariots. Each of these white-timbered constructions is drawn by a pair of snarling war lions, whose savage power is belied by their feline grace and elegantly plaited manes. Plaited manes. Whilst a Tyrannok chariot might sweep across the battlefield, carefully picking at the foe, a lion chariot of Strace charges headlong into the fray. As the war lions tear into the foe with fang and claw, the crew fight from the chariot platform, cleaving heads from shoulders with every axe blow. Such daring charges have become the hallmark of the lion chariots, earning them well-deserved reputation as the bane of even the most determined shield wall. So, that is awesome, guys. It's chariots led by lions, and I don't think you can get a much cooler unit in the High Elf roster. So I really hope that it's an addition that Creative Assembly make, because the idea of like a heavy chariot that can go toe-to-toe with like heavy infantry just sounds awesome. So I really hope they add that. Also, just seeing a lion on the battlefield, I think is going to be really interesting. Because, I mean, you know, lions are cool, right? It's going to add a lot of flavour, and so I hope that's something they do. So, fingers crossed, guys. If you're not crossing your fingers, then you're doing all of us a disservice, alright? So cross those fingers. Thank you. It's appreciated. And one other thing that I'm very proud of, which is a gameplay thing, you know, it's not a lore thing. But here you can see this ambush. I managed to mimic the white lions, you know, the sort of Thracian hunters, using ambush tactics to stop dark elves, you know, rampaging across Strace. So I was really proud of this one, that I managed to get that, because, you know, sometimes it just doesn't happen, right? So I was very lucky to have got that, but I think this is a nice, you know, lore-appropriate way to dispose of these silly high elves that think they can wander across Ulthuan, you know. So it's a lot of fun. I just thought I'd point that out, because it's appropriate, right? So, to finish off talking about the White Lions, well, we've got to talk about their captain, right? And potential legendary lord in the future of Total War. Potentially, Corhill. He's the captain of the White Lions, and all-round good chap. So, moving on. No, of course we're going to talk about him. So, when the captain of the White Lions met his death at the hands of the Dark Elf assassin Urian Poisonblade, the bodyguard of the Phoenix King gathered to select a new leader from amongst their ranks. Their choice, approved and blessed by the Phoenix King, was the warrior Corhill. Corhill was a famous warrior even before his rise to captain. Years before, it had been he who had hunted and slain the great lion Charandis. Or Charandis, you know, again, we're up, you know, with, is it a soft CH or a, you know, a loud one? Anyway. Charandis, maybe. This was a particularly ferocious creature, mutated by the warping power of chaos to an armor-hided brute that was mighty even by the standards of other white lions. That's scary. Very, very scary. Dozens of Thracian hunters had tried to bring Charandis down, but the beast had slain them all. The young Corhill, however, was not to be deterred, and he headed into the Thracian uplands in search of his prey. Charandis' trail was not hard to follow, for it was marked with the bloody bodies of those who had attempted to end his rampage. When Corhill finally encountered Charandis, the lion was near mad with bloodlust, and savage beyond belief. Yet Kernos was with the young hunter that day. Soon realizing his axe blows had no effect on Charandis' magical hide, Corhill shifted tactics. In a feat of physical strength, unheard of for an elf, he wrestled the raging beast to the ground and throttled the life from its thrashing body. That's right, the axe didn't do the job, so he just strangled the thing to death. So, yeah, no wonder he's captain, right? I mean, come on. So, Corhill's success earned him an instant invitation to join the Phoenix King's White Lion bodyguard. Only twice before had such an offer been made to so young a warrior, and Corhill was swift to accept. In the decades that followed, the young hunter grew into a grizzled White Lion veteran, proving his worth time and again against Dark Elf assassins and the dread beast of the Anulii. Or Anuli. The mountains, basically. The Anuli, or the Anulii. I like the EI bit, is, you know, like the, Triarii, right? It's the sort of the Latin soldier thing, you know, from previous Total Wars. You remember Rome. That was a thing. Anyway, thus has Corhill served Finnebar, the seafarer, with unfailing loyalty for many years, and has stood steadfastly beside him at many battles. Indeed, Corhill's gemstone set belt was a gift from Finnebar following the Battle of Tora Share, where Corhill hurled himself on the path of Morek the Black's Manticore. Corhill was badly mauled, but gave far better than he got, disemboweling the beast with a single swing of his axe before unconsciousness took him. The White Lions claim Corhill to be the mightiest elf in all of Ulthuan, and certainly his strength and stature is legendary, yet Corhill is no lumbering giant, for he wields his long axe with a dexterity and grace that makes even his fellow White Lions appear cumbersome. His honest demeanour and noble bearing have won him many friends amongst the lords of Ulthuan, and the heroes of other races besides. Corhill has ever repaid this friendship with the same loyalty. He offers his liege, and gladly marches to his allies' aid should the Phoenix King consent to sparing his services. Thus has Corhill's axe spilt blood in many lands, and in the cause of many peoples not his own. And unfortunately, guys, I cannot find details of so many things in this. The Battle of Tora Share. So that's the capital of Strace. All I know is that it was the Dark Elves that attacked, because it's in their army book too. But just as a footnote within a timeline, it's just an event that they point out, but they don't go into detail about it. It basically just says, you know, Dark Elves during the, Battle of Tora Share, Finnebar managed to avoid getting assassinated. And it's the same in the High Elf books. It's just always a footnote. They never talk about it. It's kind of annoying, honestly. It's very frustrating, because I really want to know more about that. And as well as that, him going to other lands and fighting for other people, maybe it's the Empire, or, I don't know, Britonia, who knows? I can't find any details about that. I've looked through a few books to try and find mention of him, but I can't. So guys, if any of you have a source for any of that, that would be great, because I want to do it right with this stuff. I don't like to not be able to cite my source, so I don't tend to rely on wikis and things for this. I want it to be first-hand. So if I don't have the book in front of me, I don't really want to talk about it unless I know the source specifically. So if you guys have any idea, I don't know if it's any novels, perhaps, or what, but I can't find anything more about Corhill and his adventures, but it sounds interesting, so if you do know anything, let me know. But one thing that it did mention, we'll talk about Corhill, is that the favour of Kernos was with him, right, when he killed that lion. So, Charandis. So, I want to talk about Kernos, because we haven't really talked about him. A little bit, but not in a lot of detail. It was just sort of in brief. We just know he's the hunter god, right? That's all we know so far. So I want to talk to him a little bit more. So, Kernos, the hunter. Kernos the hunter is the lord of both forests and beasts, the spirit of the untouched forests, wild animals, and trackless wilderness. He is the husband of Isha, and all elves are his children. Wherever Kernos travels, he is followed by a pack of baying hounds, and when he sounds his horn, the wild hunt follows him, their hearts filled with unrestrained joy. All hunters venerate Kernos, for he watches over them in the wilds. He requires that a hunter never kills animals for sport, but slays only dangerous beasts, and hunts only enough game to eat. To offend Kernos is to invite disaster, for his vengeance is swift and brutal. Those that transgress his laws are well served not to enter those places where the natural world is at its wildest. Few that do so emerge from the untamed lands, and those that do escape are invariably ashen-faced, scarred, and silent for the remainder of their lives. Illyrian is considered by many to be Kernos' chosen kingdom in Ulthuan, for its wild plains and dense forests are home to many wild beasts, against which a hunter can test his skills. Many a hollow conceals an altar of horn, bone, and briar, where Kernos' adherents make their observances away from the prying eyes of more civilized elves. Sometimes, the wind on plains carries the echo of the hunter god's horn. If heard at dawn, it is considered to be a very good omen for that day's hunt. If heard at dusk, it is Kernos' warning that evil stalks the land, and that all hunters must ready their bows for two-legged prey. Two-legged prey. That's creepy. But also kind of makes you think, maybe they're the prey? The elves are the prey? Or beastmen are coming? Because they're two-legged. And maybe, you know, that's what the elves need to be attacking. I don't know. It's scary. That's creepy. But either way, yeah, Kernos, you know, his horn at dusk, bad. So don't do that. That's bad. So, yeah, pretty cool though. Yeah, Kernos, or as some Imperials call him, Karnos, also known as Tal. If they're all the same god, which is kind of likely given the similarities. And also he's married to Isha. So Tal is married to Raya, and Raya and Isha don't really sound the same, but they basically represent the same things, sort of fertility and sort of the nicer things in the world, agriculture and stuff like that. You know, home and fertility, and safety, I guess. So, you know, there's similarities there as well. And if you look at Kernos, the sort of aspect, the avatar of Kernos, with Orion being, you know, the legendary lord of the, you know, the Wood Elves, right? King of the Wood, King of the Wild Hunt, right? Mel Gibson, you know the one. Yeah, he's actually very similar to Tal, how Tal is depicted. So here, unfortunately, I am actually reading from Wiki, which I just said I would do. Which is annoying, but it was succinct, so I'm just going to go with it. But Tal is usually depicted as a huge muscular man with long beard and antlers upon his head. So his second most favoured form is that of a mighty stag. He's Kernos, isn't he? Like, it's so similar. So yeah, there's that too. I just love to bring up these similarities because it's just so cool that the pantheons entwine so much, and yet worship is, you know, quite different around the world. Also, Kernos is depicted as having wolves around him. But Tal, his brother, is Ulrich, who's also a wolf. So it could just be talking about Ulrich. So it could be that, you know, the wolves are as venerated as the god is in, you know, the Empire, you know, Imperial Pantheon. So, you know, more interesting curiosity, you know, more overlap between all that stuff. So, yes, anyway, enough about all that. But while we are on the subject of religion, we're going to talk about another elven god here quickly, because we don't have long left in the episode. So it's yeah, we don't have time to start, you know, talk about another province or anything. So yeah, so this one is Morai Heg. Morai Heg, the crone. So Morai Heg is an ancient and withered creature, the keeper of the souls and the weaver of prophecy. She, and she alone, knows the future and reads the patterns of time. She sets the stars of the heavens, and thus the future can be read from the night sky. The High Elves believe that Morai Heg knows the fate of all, and that every death, no matter how trivial, is foretold by the crone. Morai Heg is a vexsome and shifting being, and commonly stands apart from the quarrels of the other gods. Hers is not the distant aloofness practiced by Asurlian, however, but a scheming neutrality that exploits any heavenly discord to her own advantage. Thus, there is not a god of the elves who does not owe Morai Heg thanks and retribution in equal measure. Ravens are said to be Morai Heg's messengers. They soar across Ulthuan and the barbaric lands of the younger races, bearing snippets of the crone goddess's wisdom to those that have the wit to interpret the signs. Thus, Ulthuan's Archer regiments hark at every coarse raven song, and mourn the passing of each member of the chorus. Such actions are thought to be the obsessions of simple minds by some of the nobility, but the archers care not. It is not due to mock Morai Heg, they say. She knows whether the arrow they loose will find their mark or not, and such knowledge grants a power that should not be offended. So that's Morai Heg. Mor. There's a god called Mor, that's right, in the Imperial Pantheon. And but he's not a crone, he's a he. So that's interesting. So slight change there. But reading from the Tome of Blessings, which is a 3rd edition Warhammer Fantasy roleplay supplement on religion and you know, the cults and stuff. Reading from that, there's a passage here for particularly the omens of Mor, rather than talk about Mor in general, is his omens. So, as Mor is the god of dreams, he often chooses to communicate with his priests in dreams or dreamlike visions. These visions are often highly symbolic, with the iconography of death being prevalent. Ravens, skulls, skeletons, graveyards, and black roses are common in both dreams and waking visions. In addition to his role as god of the dead, Mor is also the god of prophecy. While many of his omens are exactly what one might expect, a raven circling a house where someone is about to die, for instance, he may also grant more far-ranging visions of the future to his priests. So he's Morai Heg, right? There's just so many similarities, and I just find that really fascinating. Just the fact that, you know, there's two separate pantheons, you know, but they're very much the same, and a lot of that could just simply be that in Warhammer, if you believe in something, it gives it, you know, it gives it matter, right? It kind of exists because of the belief, but also something existing could then deify it, such as Sigmar. People believed in him so highly that he became a god. So that's really cool. So the idea that there are all these gods basically sharing the same kind of things, and occasionally people get a bit of hearsay and find out about the god more personally, then maybe the stories start to coincide. Or as cultures move further apart, you get bigger language, you know, gaps there, but they're all essentially worshipping the same powers, which I find incredibly interesting. So anyway, in the next episode we're going to probably talk about the next province, but we've gone on a bit, clearly run out of footage some time ago. But, you know, I wanted to finish my thought. So, guys, if you enjoyed this, please do comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good day, guys.